we have been taught to care about other people, to invest in building relationships with other people, but never with ourselves. But the problem is that everything stems from you. You know, if you don't know who you are, you cannot give other people what you don't have. And you'll never show up as your best because you don't even know what your best looks like.
Wow.
You just become different versions in different rooms for everybody else. And when those people leave, they leave you with this version that you can't even use anymore because you built it for them.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the ICT Dynamic Woman podcast. We are here again at Edgars Beauty, where obviously it is Face Beat Friday with my friends from Bobby Brown. Another exciting day where Tops did me up. My girl Tops made sure that I am looking fabulous today. So here we are, and aren't we looking also cute? It is a Friday, and of course today we are talking all things mental health, a subject really close to my heart, and I have none other than the beautiful and fabulous Faith Wesson. Faith is all about mental health. She has gamified this. She has actually brought mental health and technology together.
Wow, I feel very humbled by the experience and honored to be chosen to be part of this amazing podcast talk. I think, we don't talk about it much as women when we achieve things and we're breaking barriers. So for me, I'm very excited. I've met a lot of amazing women already, and we've spoken about our own individual parts, how we are breaking barriers in our personal lives as well as professional lives. So the part I'm really excited about on this podcast is really just diving deeper into how we support women who want to break that glass ceiling that has stood for generations. So I'm looking forward to that, very much so.
From here, we are moving uptown, baby, all the way to the Radisson, where I will be having a conversation with the beautiful and also awesome Faith Wesson. As I said, all things mental health, all things about taking care of yourself. I look forward to having this conversation.
Me too.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the ICT Dynamic Woman podcast, a space where we celebrate and elevate women in the ICT space. Today is all about mental wellness, and I bring you none other than Faith Wesson, a mental wellness coach, and what she calls herself a cultural intelligence coach. I don't want to waste any time. Mental health is very close to me, and I want to actually bring you into the conversation. Let us have this conversation with Faith today. So let us welcome her. Faith, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Sos. I appreciate you bringing me on here today. Excited.
We've been talking about how do we collaborate, how do we actually bring together the world of ICT and wellness. Yeah. But just like any other episode, let us start with your journey. What inspired you to start the work in mental health and also what you call cultural intelligence, which I find so intriguing?
I always shoot for the stars when I do these things. So I think on the mental wellness side, what really inspired me is one, just watching my parents, how they handled, challenges in their lives and how they just couldn't regulate their emotions and how contagious the emotion was. Because, spent a lot of our childhood really just having a lot of anxiety and depression. Yeah. And it wasn't even our own anxiety, depression. It was our parents' anxiety and depression. Right. So, for me, I realized it wasn't just only us who were experiencing that, but kids around us. And when you got to dive deeper and we had those kind of conversations where we sat together and just trying to figure out why is it so hard to be a teenager? the root cause actually came from the fact that our parents just didn't understand us, and there was so much overwhelming emotions in the houses. And that's why we used to escape and go and sit somewhere behind behind the buildings. And we started like teenage drinking, not because we wanted to. It was our way of coping with this overwhelming emotions that we couldn't control and didn't even know how. We didn't even have a name for them. I think that was in fact. So for me, having watched that and also having watched my own dad go through depression, dad dying as a depressed man was the most heartbreaking thing, because nowhere in clinics or in hospitals do they actually offer people resources for mental health. When they're giving news like you have cancer, my dad found out that he had cancer, prostate cancer, there wasn't really much counseling. People forget that you're talking to human beings. So they have to deal with these emotions themselves. And watching all of that having happened to my own family, for me, it gave me that drive to say, I don't want that to happen to other people's families. I'm going to be the bridge that brings the tools straight in homes, but in a non-traditional way that is easy, palatable for people to understand, simple, but fun, and it builds relationships. So for me, on the mental wellness side, that was the inspiration and what drives me even till today. And then cultural intelligence.
Cultural intelligence. I mean, I found this so interesting. And because, I mean, the reason why I even want us to, talk about cultural intelligence is because we're going to get into the workspace now shortly. What is cultural intelligence?
The best way to describe it is that where emotional intelligence stops, that's where cultural intelligence begins. Meaning that, people, I think because we are so modernized, we think that we're all speaking the same language. If you understand the different culture customs where people come from, like I'm Zulu, and Xhosa people react differently to certain things. So sometimes when we say certain things, they have a different meaning for somebody else. Like how we communicate is different. Like you can't stare at somebody, an African male who's older than you in the eyes. That's very disrespectful.
Right.
So modernized, and we believe that staring at somebody, making eye contact means trust. In more modern places. Right. So for me, cultural intelligence was that same, because it breaks down communication, causes a lot of conflict, because people don't understand that we are having a conversation, but you're on different wavelengths when it comes to how we build trust. Some people believe in more of a tribal community kind of building trust, where it's relationship based. Some people believe in somebody earning trust through tasks, being consistent in how they show up on an individual level. So
absolutely,
cultural intelligence is that thing of understanding those subtle things that make us different because of where we come from, who we come from, what is our bloodline, and then understanding those things and being able to adapt how we communicate, how we make decisions, how we even build teams, especially diverse teams, because they are now a competitive edge in a global space. So understanding how people even take feedback is so important, because if you communicate it in a way they don't understand, or they find it rude or confusing, you will not get the results you're looking for. So cultural intelligence is that space where you're learning about people, and people are different on a cultural level, and you adapt your leadership to meet them on that level.
I love how you've beautifully packaged that, because I think we often struggle to explain to our peers, to say, when I come in as Sibs and I can't look at you, Natasha or Mark, in the eye, because it is in my culture disrespectful. And then we suddenly find ourselves navigating that space and saying, in the workplace, I can't carry that. And that also brings about a shift that is very hard for a lot of us. You spoke about personal experiences. I mean, I have also looked at or experienced my mom go through depression. And a lot of times, and when she passed, a lot of times she was misunderstood as to what was going on with her. So from your personal experiences, would you say that is firstly your anchor, as you said, in terms of why you actually focused on mental wellness? Would you say that it was easy for your society to understand what you were delving into as you went into what I would say now this space, your career and your passion?
I wouldn't say it was easy. There's so much stigma around mental health, because remember, when somebody got depressed, people thought that you were bewitched.
Yeah.
No, everybody, everybody was like, you've gone crazy,
Yes.
Because the thing is, depression, anxiety, all these things, when it happen, you go out of your routine, the normal behavior, what is characterized as being normal. Because you don't know what to do with yourself. You're overwhelmed, you're underwhelmed, you don't know, you can't get out of bed. And people think, no, you're bewitched, especially if you like rural areas or townships. Yeah. So it was very hard trying to explain to people that it was actually your mind. Everything stems from your brain. It's like your brain works in a certain way.
Yeah.
And then there's trauma. Trying to explain those things was so high level for many people that we had to go back to basics and just say, let's educate people and say, do you understand how your body works?
Wow.
Do you understand that what are feelings and how emotions and how they play a role, and how your thoughts are also triggered by emotions, and emotions are also and your emotions trigger your thoughts. So we had to go back and almost give people a whole biology lesson. And I still continue to do that. But the only way I could possibly do that was to create games where people got to see it from their own real life experiences. So they'll connect what I'm saying to their own real life experiences. And that's what the game was. It had to be relatable to them. Not me, because I understood at that level, but I had to meet them where they were.
Where they were.
Yeah.
Which is very important. And we're going to get to the gamification part now. I just want us to, let's take it now to the workplace.
Yeah.
So we you touched on trauma, how we have traveled with the trauma. And now we're showing up in workplaces, workspaces, and this is who we are. So, you're coming in and nobody knows where, was Sibs' mom depressed and does she have to go and carry all of that? Was Faith's dad depressed? No one knows that. So now in the workplace, how are we now expecting, these workspaces to meet emotional needs and to also meet what was, what we could say was once met by social systems? Yeah. So what is that not a burden to them? How do we expect them to show up?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, because I think now more than ever, people work longer, which is one of the biggest issues. To say you're taking your work home. And now having technology, it's actually made it even more complicated that people are now working around hours. Even my own friends, you're still talking to somebody at 7 o'clock, they've got their laptop on.
Yeah.
They're actually on these team meets and they're talking to other people while they're cooking, people are working. And you're just like, when is knock off time?
Yeah.
And so that is one of the biggest issues, to say that if people don't get time to tap into their other social systems, so other social networks, then they're going to rely on the system that drains them more, which is their work. Because if you spend a lot of time in work, that means that those are the relationships that become the focal point. And that's where you start seeing the cracks, because you're spending way too much time with somebody than you should have,
It's no longer 8 hours.
Yeah, so that's like 10 hours, and you're getting frustrated because, one, you're tired, you're not meeting the demands of your life, which is your kids, your husband, your boyfriend, or your family, whoever it is. And you feeling that, what, these people are taking a lot out of me, but I need this because this is my job and I need it because it's for survival. And so now the onus is on businesses to say, if you want high performing teams, and if you want these people to work beyond the hours that you have kind of said on the contracts, and now it's like,
It's a gray area.
That's a great area. Let's lead in team. Now it's like we actually completing these tasks. We need to complete the task. It's not you have 8 hours. If you didn't complete the task, tomorrow is it tomorrow? No, like let's lean in. And so if you're gonna want that from people, then you're gonna have to give them the resources for them to regulate themselves and to manage themselves and to be healthy in order to be a high performing team for your business. So you see, it's a double-edged sword. You want people to work longer, to work more, to contribute so that you can increase your bottom line, which means that they bring the problems to you, because now it's kind of blurred lines. People don't know when to end work and when to begin their personal life. It's like kind of like merged now.
It's merged.
So people, and since people don't know how to regulate themselves, it's just coming out in every direction. And unfortunately, the space you spend the most time in, you're going to see it more.
I'm smiling because, after 2 decades in this space, when I finally said, let me hang my gloves and go spend time with my children, it was basically because I was questioning the whole wellness and stance that organizations have taken. And I think you can guide us here. So let's be fair to organizations. They've got wellness. They've invested a lot in employee wellness. But if we think about it, what does a mentally healthy organization look like? Beyond the slogans, beyond the wellness days, what does that organization look like?
You know, I think we've actually answered the question recently. Because funny enough, most of the time when I speak to employees, they get the programs, but it feels like a tick box exercise.
Absolutely.
We did it, guys, we did it, though we never did it for you. But what really gets to people is that the unfairness that happens, the systems that are built in that actually oppress people when they have conflicts at work, those things are not really resolved properly. Problems are not resolved. They don't get feedback that they need. There's a breakdown in communication, and I don't feel like people appreciate them. And things like people don't say thank you to me. People don't even greet.
Right.
It's the basic things that get to people that burn them out emotionally and mentally, because they feel like, I'm here every day and you don't see me.
You don't acknowledge.
You don't even understand. You call me anytime you want. When you need something, you suddenly know my name. Yeah, I'm a star now. And then when one of your star employees is doing something that I feel is unethical, and I bring it to you because they're a star employee, suddenly there's a gray area.
Yeah.
Process now doesn't work the same.
Yeah.
And then you victimize me, the victim. If I then retaliate, then it's me who's in the wrong instead of the star employee. So, so it becomes the victim again who's in the wrong, and they need to apologize. They need to do all of that stuff. So I think that is the biggest issue. So a mentally healthy organization is an organization that says, if these are cultural values, then you have to live by them.
Yeah.
And it must be reflected in your systems. It must be reflected in how people present themselves in day-to-day things.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing. I think organizations miss that. They say these pretty things, but they're idealistic in sometimes, because they forget that the biggest and hugest headache of any organization is the people. Right.
Absolutely.
It's people. So I think a lot of investment in making sure that people follow the culture, they live the culture. And when problems arise, your systems do what they were supposed to do in the first place. And that's what people really want. Essentially, is to say, if you say that there's a process in how we deal with conflict here, and it's written like this, I expect it to go that way, regardless of who it is. For a leader or for your entry-level employee, it should work the same. Why is there a gray area when the system does not have a gray area? So that is what a mentally healthy organization is. You stick to what you say, you walk your talk, and hold people accountable when you need to.
That is such a powerful thing. And I wish most organizations, would actually walk the talk. Actually, not the organization as an organ, because the organization is its people. So leaders need to start being cognizant of how they show up. You've touched on burnout and emotional fatigue. And this is where we are seeing a lot of talent leaving the workplace, especially for women in leadership and caregiving roles. Because, one moment you're in the boardroom, you're showing up, and then the next moment you're supposed to be at home and be this caregiver. Now, looking at the work that you are doing, what are some of the warning signs that leaders often ignore, and how should they respond?
I think most of the warning signs start with just really being irritated, like feeling overwhelmed by the small things in your life, things that used to be easy to do. Once you start feeling like, when people start asking for stuff and you start just like being very volatile, like just erupting and start screaming about ideas, once you start losing your composure in things that are really like very trivial, you need to know that you're heading for burnout, because what it means is that you are mentally drained. You no longer can think logically. You don't have clarity anymore. You need time to sleep. And most of the time people start having like headaches. They start just like, and then what they do is when they're starting to feel that tiredness, like you had a good sleep, but when you wake up, you're still feeling exhausted. And what people do is they take like Red Bull and do all these things to just like coffee, and they take coffee after coffee, which actually kind of speeds up the whole fatigue and burnout.
Whoa.
And I've heard of stories where people have actually collapsed. Because the thing is, you ignore that point where you in a conversation, it should be easy for you, but you are just struggling. You're struggling to stay present. You're struggling to actually give somebody. So once you start feeling that I can't cope with the small things, those are the first signs.
Wow.
Then you need to assess and audit what is happening in my life, which relationships are draining me, and take a step back. And I think most people also, the fact that you're working around the clock, it's not sustainable. You know, we can all pull an all-nighter once in a while, but like putting proper all-nighters is a lot. So
Because, I mean, we talk about situations where people will be like, I work 17-hour days. I used to be one of those. And is that really sustainable?
no, not for your body. Your body was not built for that. And the amount of stress, because your cortisol levels are spiking up throughout the day. Because you're tired and you're pushing through, you're actually stressing your body beyond what it's capable of handling. And then you put yourself at risk for heart attacks and all kinds of diseases. That's why people have like high blood pressure. And you're like, that doesn't even run in the family. How is it possible you have? That's because you activate those type of things when you do those things. When you put your body under stress, it can't handle. So that's why I say to people, even my clients, exercise, eat well, get sleep. Because once you're too tired, you will not be in the right frame of mind to make good decisions.
Won't you say, though, that everybody is lost in the hype around we are a high performance culture organization? I mean, such slogans or such utterances can really put pressure on people.
Yeah, no, definitely. Absolutely right. I think when people say that, at the beginning, it sounds like a compliment when they hire you to say, if you think you're a high-performing person, but it becomes very stressful because then it sets an expectation that you need to meet targets at a certain level. And if you fall from that grace, you're not good. Now. So people have to keep it up because that's what they said they could do. That's what they said they wanted to be part of a high-performing team, but it's not realistic. We have to understand that people are at their best when they're well-rested, when they're eating well, when they can regulate their emotions and regulate their stress. You get the best out of people when they can do those things for themselves.
So eat, exercise, pray, love. We throw it in.
That is very important because you need community. That's why a lot of people are struggling because they don't see their loved ones. They don't get time to just sit down and just relax. Because if you're sitting with somebody who's calm, like a family member who's relaxed, your nervous system mirrors theirs and basically relax you. But if you spend a lot of time with your laptop, that is not going to be the feeling that you're going to be getting. So,
absolutely.
Serotonin also is activated when you're with somebody you love or people that you love, your friends, your family. And that hormone as well brings down your stress levels, oxytocin, all those things. So your body is a very magical thing.
So, Faith, one of the things that you and I have always spoken about since we met is always about the in my feelings. Not only the game itself, which we're going to talk about now, but as you found it and you said in my feelings, I thought, geez, who wants to get into their feelings? Because most of the time, as we said, mental wellness or mental health is quite a taboo subject. But let's get into the in my feelings game. Talk to us more about the in my feelings game. What inspired it and how is it being used currently in personal and organizational spaces?
Okay, so what inspires this game? Like I've said before, I started having community meetups with other teenagers when I was 16. And from then onwards, I started giving back in spaces. But I realized that doing this one-time events was not sustainable. And plus, once people got comfortable and they started talking, we had to end the event because, it's just the time. There was a time restraints, And then I realized, what? We needed tools that would still continue the conversation long after they've left. And one of the things is once you leave, the person who's leading or facilitating that session, people don't know how to carry on, even though they've got this amazing information, they can change their lives. Change their lives. And so we failed on all accounts because when we led it, they were listening to us. Now they don't know how to execute after we've left. So for me, it just took me a while to say, how do we build a tool that continues the conversation, continues the growth after we leave? Not just for adults, but for also kids, because kids were learning while adults were unlearning. And we needed some tool that can provide for both without, splitting it too much. Because like I said, after a while, I understood that were generational trauma cycles. It was very important to create a tool that kind of tackled that issue without making people defensive. And so that was the inspiration behind the game. Because in my childhood, when I look back, the best days were when we used to play games, like Crazy Eights and playing games, Amagenda, all these weird things. It's just it was fun. Everybody was laughing, having fun. So I wanted to bring back that same spirit, that same funness, but in serious conversations, because as we know, when you try to have a serious conversation about somebody addressing their behavior,
No.
it does not go. It does not even go. So it's just like, can we talk? It's automatically, applied.
And so you went into gamification. I mean, in corporate, most of the time when we look at technology, new technology, there was a time where we had gamification as the buzzword, where we said if we gamify, then we would have more adoption. And before we even get into the game itself, because I've got a few favorites here, I just wanted to, you've spoken about Crazy 8 and Ghetto, things that we used to play. Did you find it easy or are you finding rather that gamifying has made it easier for people to adopt?
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure. Yes, it has made it easier because we don't tackle the situation head on. It's a slow progress to the actual issue.
Okay.
You're building it up, you're pacing them through it, using games. So by the time they get to the real issue, they're comfortable, they feel safe. So safety is always.
Yeah.
An emotional, psychological safety. It's been built with each and every card. And by the time we say, okay, here's the issue, we're good, they're comfortable. They they trusted the process. They're going to keep going because they're feeling like, you know what, I'm good, I'm safe. I can actually have this conversation now.
That's awesome. So before we even go anywhere, I want us to look at this game. In my feelings, it is called Introduce Us to This. I mean, we've got quite interesting, very interesting genres or categories here. Umjolo vibes, parent hot seat, team cohesion, and lastly, I think this is what struck me, Umjolo and Who Am I? Which one is your favorite? Take us through the game.
Okay, so I will definitely say Who Am I? Because I think we have been taught to care about other people, to invest in building relationships with other people, but never with ourselves. But the problem is that everything stems from you. If you don't know who you are, you cannot give other people what you don't have. And you'll never show up as your best because you don't even know what your best looks like.
Wow.
You just become different versions in different rooms for everybody else. And when those people leave, they leave you with this version that you can't even use anymore because you built it for them.
Yeah.
And that's why you always feel empty when people leave. And that's why some of us can't even spend time by ourselves because we don't even know who we look at in the mirror. It's like, What is this? And we start calling people up and saying, I need to go out, I need to do stuff, because we don't know how to be with ourselves. Don't even know who we're looking at. We need to be able to know who we are in relation to others. That's how we know ourselves, relation to other people.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
And yes, very scary. So I will let you then. Do you ask the questions?
So I can ask questions. You can ask the questions. The game is very relaxed. It's very informal. Whoever wants to ask the question is more than welcome.
Okay, so for the sake of today, I will take Who Am I? I will give that to you. And then I will choose Umjolo vibes. And let's see how it goes.
Okay, so what's this one we're speaking about? Self-discipline. What helps you complete tasks and fulfill commitments even when you're not feeling emotionally or physically well?
Sure. All right. I think for me, it's literally, it's the fear, actually. It's fear of not having. So that is what helps me get up when I don't want to do anything and I just feel like I can't drag myself out of bed. The question, and it's probably a psychological thing, I always say, if I don't get up, then what?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I feel the same way. And I think for me, it's like, I don't want to let myself down. Because I think to myself, it starts with one day, then it becomes 2 days, right? See, I have a habit that I've built to not do something. So I rather do the hard thing now because I've done those things before in my life and I've seen the results. And so once you know, you do better. That is my slogan. Once you know, you do better.
You do better. And of course, I am afraid of poverty. So
that is really a good motivator. Poverty will motivate you.
It'll motivate you. Yeah. Cool. Let's go into Mjolo vibes. This must be a favorite. This must be one that gets people going.
All right. So this one is usually when you have your partner across you.
Okay. Let's fit
All right. So it says, complete the sentence. When I address your unpleasant behavior, it is because... ...
Wow.
I need you to take responsibility for your behavior because...
So would they then be
Yes.
the person to respond?
So it's two parts. So the first part, you're making them understand that when you're addressing the behavior, the reason why you're addressing the behavior. So they must understand that you're not trying to pick up a fight, but because this is mentally, it's hurting you in some way.
Yeah.
And they need to understand that's the only reason you're having this conversation, because you can't take the pain that comes from that behavior.
Wow.
And then you tell them that you need them to take the responsibility, because you don't feel that this will be good for the relationship, or you might decide that to end the relationship because this violates your boundary.
Wow.
So you're able to explain to the person why they're having this conversation right now, and then why is it important, and what would potentially happen if they don't take the responsibility of their behavior. So the questions are light, some of them are light, some of them go deep, but the whole point is to build a kind of communication between you and your partner to say, can we hold each other accountable for our behavior? Do we want to change? Are we really that invested in the relationship that we are willing to make changes when it's necessary, when our partners are suffering? Can we do that?
Wow.
So you see, there's an objective to see how invested are we.
Yeah.
Like some ways 10 years.
I mean, just lastly, because we were talking about, the corporate space, this team cohesion. I mean, let us look at this one.
So this one is saying team diversity. How can having a diverse team enhance the team's ability to be more agile and efficient in producing high quality products and services more faster?
Wow.
So this is usually nice when you have a team building, to help people understand that why we've chosen these particular people in the room, and what would it mean for the team and for what we are building. So it's to get people into a collaborate space, to understand that we are collaborators in the space.
Yeah.
No, it's not an individual goal, it's a team goal. And there's a purpose as to why we brought these particular people in this room. And how do we use each other's individual, talents and our culture and all that stuff. All these things make us unique to drive the business goal.
This one makes me so excited, because we are now in the space where, we're constantly speaking about the 2000s, the Gen Z, the Gen X. And every time our generation has a conversation, we always say, it's so hard to work with them at 2000, And I always ask myself, what is it, when we speak diversity, people always think color.
Yeah.
And I always say diversity for me is bringing in different talents, no matter the age, the color, the gender. We're bringing in or sexuality. We're bringing in all these talents in the room. In your experience, what is the data telling you around how we are faring when it comes to diversifying or working in diversified teams?
To be honest, a lot of companies have dropped the DEI because it's actually harder, because people don't want to bring in people who think differently from them. They don't want to promote people. They want to think. Don't have this think group thing where, like, I'm only bringing people that have my values, that believe in what I believe in. So the data tells us that people are keen at the beginning, but they don't know how to maintain that diversity, to keep it going, to leverage it properly, because it becomes very complicated. Like, like you said, we talk about, people's sexual orientation, stuff like that, and people be like, I don't know how to handle this, the pronouns, people, there's a lot of things. People are like, this is too much work. Can we just go back to having the same values, everybody's thinking the same way?
We digress.
Yes. So, and also that ageism as well, like, really, that's a big thing to say. You can't do that. Someone's like, no, I actually want younger people. But, the older people sometimes have the experience, and younger people need to be trained up to that point. So there's like a lot of those things. So people mean well when they take it on, but they don't understand how difficult it is to continuously move the needle with this, to train people and train your colleague, train your organization and your employees to think a certain way, to say, hey, diversity matters. It's just a lot of energy people have to spend doing that. And people don't want to do that because it's time that they don't really want to pay for, because it doesn't make money to do that. You know what I mean? It doesn't make the company money. So that's a problem I found. Yeah, definitely.
And Faith, so we're seeing the physical game. The app had been running. Tell me more about the app. How are we merging, as we said, mental health, and you merging it now with technology? Where are we now? with regards to the app?
Okay, so initially we did an MVP of the app where we digitalized the games and we made them smaller, where families, so we had like games for people, families could play together like on a Friday night. So there's like music, there's icebreakers. They could have what we call the mental wellness parties. So the games, even on the app, were called mental wellness parties where you and your family can just choose a Friday and then you use the games to just have the conversations to check in emotionally how everybody was doing. So we gamified it. So it was like about 5 cards with a beginning and an end, and then and then there were coping tools people could use. So at the beginning, what you would do is you check your emotions, and then the app would take you through a process in unpacking why you're feeling a certain way. And at the end of it, it will give you a coping tool. It could have been a breath work, a movement tool, or some of the South African voices we actually included, which talked you down.
Yeah.
And they led you through. It was 4 South African women from different backgrounds, African, colored, white, Indian, they were all on the app. So then they would walk you through the coping tools, especially for young people who might not have parents, there. And we felt that motherly and nurturing voice was so important to have somebody say to you, it's okay. To share a real South African voice, real South African accent, saying it's okay. So we built that in the app and it was beautiful. It was MVP. Unfortunately, we had some issues with the app and stuff like that. And now we no longer have the app, which was one of the most painful moments. I won't go into details because, it becomes a legal thing. But what we're doing now is we're going to be building the app from scratch. Because now we realize as we work, because we already have an actual physical gamified mental wellness center. And we're continuously getting feedback from our clients. So now we're going to build it more stronger with more options, more coping tools, and more family orientated as well as organization orientated games for people to try out.
I'm literally looking forward to this to playing this with my family. Yeah. Before we close off, I want us to get into leadership, legacy, and what's next for you. So when you look at the audience that you've now built, from your client space and as you continue to grow, what would you say helps you focus and focus for 2025 for you?
Well, I think for me, the focus has been on perfecting and bringing coping tools that are actually useful for both family and individuals, but also catering and customized for South African people, knowing the diversity in culture as well as language. So that has been the focus to say, I must not think, in a generic way to say everybody's the same. It's to understand, those deep layers and the multi-generations we're speaking to, because Konu Gogo, Uma, and the kids and everybody thinks differently. They were all born in a different era. So how do we connect all of these people? Because they're not only in the home space, but they're also in the organizational space, and people who struggle with that. It's not just only Gen Z they struggle with it. They also struggle with the older employees who have been there long enough, who add value, but they don't know how to actually communicate and then kind of integrate these people in this new world of tech and this fast-paced world. So for me, that was my focus, to say, how do we introduce those people who are not tech savvy, who also don't understand some of the really complex language around mental wellness. So for me, it was really watering down psychology frameworks, mental wellness, neuroscience frameworks into just simple conversations that anybody, no matter which generation you belong to, you can connect with it, you can relate with it, because it speaks to your life.
Every time you speak, I literally smile because I'm just like, geez, I'm very excited about that coming. Someone is watching this podcast. They're probably going through the most. When we look at women in leadership, caregiving spaces, or in corporate spaces, what would you say they need to know about protecting their mental wellness?
I think what I would say is be selfish. I know it sounds so horrible, but what I mean is you need to take time to be by yourself. You need to rest. You need to learn to say no. It's okay to say no. I think women don't want to say no because they scare that people won't understand. But no is a boundary.
Opportunity.
Yeah. And if you can't take care of yourself, you must remember something: nothing will work in your life. And you can't help anybody else, because once you have a burnout and you end up in hospital, people will need to fend for themselves. And the fun thing about people is that self-preservation always kicks in. Survival kicks in. I think really look at your life and say, how do the people in your life, understand the pressure you're under, and how can they alleviate some of that pressure around you?
Yeah.
And just, I think, main thing I've done as a woman is always audit my life to say, if I'm under pressure, what is causing me pressure? Reevaluate things. Do I need this in my life? Can I go without it? Will it matter in 2 years' time? Will I even care about this in the next year?
Yeah, we will care that for 17 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So I think about it that way, to say, when my health goes down, I cannot buy back my health. Funny enough, money will never buy you back your health once you reach that point.
Yeah.
And so, remember that at your workplace, they will replace you at some point. They will. They definitely
Always
will.
a hard
They will.
pill to swallow.
They will.
And
Yeah.
I want to thank you for that. So, Faith, where can people connect with you, and how can they access the In My Feelings gay and other offerings? Of course, we've got the website.
Yes.
I'll let our audience.
Okay, so people can connect with us on our website, www.inmyfeelingsgame.com. They can also connect with me, whether on LinkedIn. You can search Faith Wesson. You can find me. We have Gamified Mental Wellness Center in Kailami. I usually say to people, I prefer you to email me because we keep these groups very exclusive and small for a reason, because we're protecting people's privacy and we understand what it means, to help people heal from a lot of trauma. So you can definitely get me on my email address. Gosh, it's very long. But the guys will send it through as well for those interested.
I think included as part of
definitely.
the episode. Yeah. No, thank you so much, Faith. I think you and I could go on and on. As I said, mental health and wellness is a big part of my life. And I've always advocated for that. I've always loved your work, and I wish you all the best. I can't wait personally for the app, because it is something that we need, particularly because our teenagers are always on their gadgets. We are also on our gadgets. I mean, when we wake up, we are literally on the gadget. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you so much for sharing a wealth of knowledge with us. I wish you all the best and Godspeed.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I really appreciate being here talking about mental wellness. I could go on forever as well. I'm just passionate. I live it. And thank you so much for creating these platforms where we can talk about these things and just let people know they're not alone and that there is help. So I appreciate you and I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And there you have it. What a wonderful episode. I hope this meant a very, easy and touching way for you to deal with your feelings. I am very grateful for this episode. I hope that you connect with us in the next episode. Thank you very much for joining the ICT Dynamic Women podcast. Until next time, thank you.